Coffee Oasis.
I'd like to call the December 16th work study session to order, and if you would stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Welcome. And we'll start right out with discussion item number 1. And Mr. Dorsey, would you?
Mr. Mayor, I would like to add one item to the agenda.
All right.
Bottom number 5, and I'd like to have a discussion on the Kitsap Transit Board appointment.
We added an item. That'll be item 5. Okay. Mr. Dorsey, discussion, wastewater sewer gap analysis.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. Okay, so staff was directed to research and develop a water sewer financial gap analysis prior to proceeding with utility rate discussions in 2015. As a function of the Growth Management Act compliance in 2016, staff is requesting direction on future actions needed to meet said compliance. The issue, as you know, is in 2006, the city's comprehensive plan is required to be updated and financially constrained pursuant to the Growth Management Act. Before this can occur, individual plan elements for water, sanitary sewer, storm drainage, transportation, parks, and facilities needs to be updated. This includes adjustments to capital improvement plans and associated fee structures. The water sewer gap analysis provides the basis for discussion of this issue. As quick background, on May 27, 2014, the City Council approved contract 03314 with Katie Isaacson Associates to prepare the 2014 water sewer financial gap analysis. On October 8, 2014, a presentation of the draft gap analysis was presented to the Utility Committee, and again on November 14, 2014, a presentation of the revised draft gap analysis was again presented to the Utility Committee. So with that, I would like to introduce Casey Isaacson of Isaacson and Associates for those that did not meet her previously.
Good evening.
Katie, let me just go around the table quickly and have everybody introduce themselves to you. You may know your name, but and of course you know Mark.
Mark was direct there.
I know Ellen and Dick.
Tim Mathis.
Fred Chang.
Robert Consu.
Chuck Blossom.
Jared Childs.
And Beth Nash. Oh, great. Thank you very much.
And the staff at that table.
I'm Vince Tucker with IT.
Randy Reynerson, City Clerk.
Might as well.
Pardon?
Would you like to introduce?
Oh, sure, I'm Chris Henry with the Kitsap Side.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? No? Okay, all right. Just wanted to include anybody and everybody. Okay.
Great. Well, I do utility financial planning for municipally owned utilities, help to figure out how to pay for projects and how to reimburse yourself. This is the 20th year of business, typically small to medium-sized cities like yourself, as well as water, sewer, special purpose districts. So tonight, I think we're going to talk about 4 items. This is trying to get everything in sync here. I'm big on sustainable utility. So we talk a little bit about what a sustainable utility is. Then we're going to look at the water and sewer gap analysis and in the summary of that. And the next steps for going forward are to move forward with adoption of water and sewer rates. And then, as Mark was saying, to come back in 2015 with your individual water and sewer comp plan elements, and they will be financially constrained. And for the first time, the city will be there. So congratulations. I hope we'll be for you at the end of the road. So what is a sustainable utility? By law, You are required to have self-sufficient utilities. What this means is for your water and your sewer, you bring the money into the utility, you spend it for utility expenditures, and what's left over is saved in reserve for future. So your water is saved for future capital projects, system replacement, so on and so forth, and the same with sewer. In your city, you have your reserve fund is combined. Water and sewer are together, although each of them contribute to that, and then it's used as necessary. We are today's stewards of the ratepayer-owned facilities. So in the model that you have, the ratepayers actually own those facilities. And you as the council are the stewards, setting the financial policies, setting the rates, fees, and charges, approving the budgets, and so forth to carry that out. I think it's important to look at being steady over time, because we're not just having the utility for today or for these few years. We're really trying to have that for generations into the future. So what we do today is take care of it and try to leave it in a better place than we found it, and that will continue on for future generations. So when I'm putting together a sustainable financial program, again, I like the long-term view. I try not to get caught up too much in the short term, because by looking at the long term, we want to be steady and avoid drastic impacts on customers. So if we can look out, in this we looked at 6 years, and we can look out and see where we need to be, that gives you options on how to get there. You know the direction, and our ultimate goal is to avoid drastic impact on the customers. I like to look at balancing the engineering need with the availability of funding. And the engineers have put together the plans, your engineers, PACE and BHC, one for water, one for sewer, and put together what those needs were. And we sat and we went back and forth, took the first cut. I came to the utilities committee, we discussed it, and they were quite high. And then we made a number of adjustments to really hone it down and refine it to just what the 6-year highest priority projects are. And that's what we'll be discussing tonight. It's very important that in your 6 years, it's addressing deferred maintenance. There's quite a bit of deferred maintenance in the system where system replacement is necessary. For example, on your sewer system, there's 4 pump stations that need to be replaced. It's expensive, and it can't all be done at once, but we're looking at doing that over 4 years and coming up with a finance strategy to do there. So system replacement is important, and the kind of the end and the goal of the sustainable financial program is to give you a funding strategy on how to carry out in the future, pay for your capital projects, so you keep up. Once you get there, you keep up. All right, this pauses. Okay, here we go. So let's talk about sewer. Now this, I tried to get everything down to a picture, one picture, so you can understand, from the 30,000 foot level and really think about what this is. And this is the funding gap, what I'm trying to demonstrate. And at the bottom, we have our operating revenue. Now the operating revenue says, how much are you bringing in now with your existing rates? And this is just sewer, okay? And so we have growth coming in, so it goes up a little bit. We have 50 new customers a year in sewer. Then we have grant proceeds, the orange part. In this particular scenario, the city has applied for a grant for the Marina pump station. It's about $4 million. They made it through the first cut, and they said, great, you're still in. Now, I just got an email the other day from the engineers saying the grant pot of money is very small. So you can't stay in for $4 million. Let's take the seawall and separate that out, and that's about $1 million. So we know that the scenario in here needs to be tinkered with. But what we are anticipating in this scenario was that would be grant proceeds. to go towards that marina pump station. And then what's left over is the green part, is the funding gap. So you can see in sewer, there's a little bit for 2014, then it goes up 2015. 2015 includes what's necessary for operations, your existing debt, and to do the comp plan update. Now this is driving. Okay, so we hesitate with each slide here. The sewer program. Now here's what's in the sewer program costs. Your operating expenses are the majority. They're the blue part at the bottom. And what we have is them going up by 3.5% a year. And some might argue this is too high or too low. And for some elements, it is too high, and other elements it's too low. But on average, when I go from community to community, this is a reasonable estimate going forward. And of course, when I'm looking at your sewer outlook, we're not adopting a budget from this. This is what is necessary. So we're answering a little different question, and you set your budget each year as you normally do. Then we have your step conversion program. That's a 10-year program, and it will go through 2021. So this money is there, it's available, it's being used, and at the end, in 2022, then that money will be available for some other capital projects. Okay, so that's a great way of going about it. Have a 10-year program. The existing debt service is a little bit, you can't even really see it. It's red, and what it is sewer share of the City Hall bond or loan. But it's debt service. That ends in 2019, and then that will go away. Unfortunately, it's not a very big sliver, so you don't gain much. But the capital program is then the green part on the top. And you can see how we tried. These two big ones right there are the marina pump station, and then we tried to, spread it out over the period. Okay, so here we're looking at what's the rate outlook. And we ran quite a number of scenarios, I did, and then with the Utilities Committee, there was probably 5 or 6 that we looked at, and I've honed it down to 3 here. And over here in the blue is where your existing rate is. And you can see that these 3 go up. And they're the same for about 3 years, and then they diverge, okay? They're all compared to this orange line, that's flat orange line. This is what Department of Ecology says is an affordable rate. Now, everyone has their own opinion about what's affordable, but this is the industry standard, and this is what Department of Ecology says, 2% of your median household income is what is affordable. Now, why does this matter? I am not trying to say you should set your rates at what that orange line is or compare. What I'm trying to show is what the funding programs will look at. They will look at it, and if your rates come in under that line, they say then you should be able to afford to do that capital improvement. If they're over that, then they try to help by giving a lower interest or potentially some form of grant. So it's an industry standard, that's why I'm demonstrating it here. Now, let's talk about the 3 scenarios.
So until we surpass what they deem is affordable, we're not going to score well in grant or loan application processes.
Right.
No, I want to be clear about this. You will not score well necessarily in grant, but you will score fine with loan.
Okay.
It's the similar conversation on the transportation, where if you have impact fees in place, you're going to score higher as opposed to if you're against somebody that has an impact fee in place, because they look at that somebody's having to subsidize your application.
Thank you.
So the difference is, let's talk about scenario 1 is the top red line. This assumes that you get the 87% grant for Marina Pump Station, which now we know isn't going to be that much. It takes And with a grant, with that particular grant, you will have to have a local match. And I'm assuming that you will use capital facilities charges to pay for that local match you've collected and that are in your reserve. Okay? All the rest of the capital program, I'm assuming that you will pay as you go, no borrowing. So it all has to be collected in rates and fees. Okay? That's what makes it go so high. Then I like to look at a funding strategy. I know that these projects should rate and rank quite well for the loan program. Their replacement of necessary items, and so there's SRF loans that are low interest loans. There's 60% of the bond rate, and you can pay it off over 20 years. So what this does is allow you to borrow the money today or in the year scheduled, construct the project, and you don't have a rate impact until after the project is completed, and then it turns into debt service, and that will go for 20 years. But that is a significant savings on your rates to get there. And then the bottom one says, what if we got the grant and we only had to have go for loans for 3 of the pump stations? And you can see that, yes, it's lower. So with the new information that I found, it's going to be somewhere between those two. And I think the middle one would be the one that you would want to target for setting what your rates should be, and certainly it can be adjusted along the way. Now, what does this mean in terms of numbers?
Can I ask a question? If we do a loan, does that, is that debt service limitations just out of the utility fund, or is it part of the overall city's debt limit?
It's against the utility.
Against the utility, not other things the city may do?
Yes, and the loan programs are set up in particular to be junior in lien, which means less important than your bond and what your requirements are for your bond and your tax. Okay? They're set up so that it's like a subsidy. They're trying to be helpful in any way that they can. So your existing ordinance on sewer, your existing rate is for residential flat rate, $98 for 2 months. And it's been that for some years. So under the scenarios, the rate would have to go up to about $109.50. This is about $11.50 increase for 2 months, or about $5.75 per month. And then it goes out into the future. So the one that I think is the best, scenario 2, that would reach $234 by 2020, so in 6 years. And that would fund all the projects, the highest priority projects. Under sewer, it's your replacement of your 4 pump stations and to do the comp plan update. That's all that's in there. Okay? So let's talk about water. Water's in better shape. It's in better shape because there have been rate increases over 4 years. The most recent ordinance had rate increases from 2012, 13, 14, and the final one on the books is for 2015. And you can see that the funding gap is much less because of that. The sewer rates had not been adjusted for that same amount of time. So same thing, here's our operating revenue held flat. We show growth on the water side. I have 20 new customers per year. There's going to be more on the sewer side, less on the water. We think this is a conservative number that will allow you to have a balanced plan. We don't want to have too high of a number, and so that it comes in and you don't meet it. Then you won't have enough money. So we think this was a reasonable number. Now on the water, you have an SRF
The
loan.
reason there's a difference between the number in sewer to water is that Bremerton provides water to the rich side, or we're the sewer provider for both sides.
are those numbers realistic? 15, did you say 15 new sewer?
50.
Oh, 50. I
50.
thought you said 15 and I was thinking, that's low.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's backwards.
50.
Yeah, 50 per
Okay.
year on sewer and 20 on water.
Okay.
How many total customers? About 2,000, 2,200?
Yes. No,
No.
I want to say 2,900, close to 3,000. On the water side, you have an SRF loan from Department of Health to do well 10. And that's this red part here. So loan proceeds are coming in here to pay for the construction of that project. And then the green, the funding gap, there's no funding gap here in the first 2 years. And then it's, relatively small, shall we say, compared to sewer. And so this lends itself to perhaps pay as you go. So here's the water program costs. Our operating expenses, again, are down here. They have the same sort of assumptions as in the sewer. And here's, you can see where the debt service starts. That's the debt service on the loan. So again, when we're constructing the capital project here, and then you have your debt service doesn't start for a year after substantial completion. So I'm showing that it'll start near the end of 2017, and then here's your going out for 20 years. And then the green part is your capital program. And on water, actually over here, we have a little bit add to reserves. What this means is at the end of the year, it's not specifically programmed for any particular project, and it's available to be held in reserve for your future capital projects. Okay? So, on the water rate outlook, I'm showing only one scenario here. On the water side, there's really quite a number of projects, and they're smaller in value. And so instead of, you wouldn't really borrow just for one, $250,000 project. If you were to use loans, you would want to package them to a reasonable amount, because there's some cost to administration. But here we have pay as you go. So here's the water rate, existing water rate, and then it goes up, over the years and reaches up there. What's interesting is here is your affordability line, way above anything that you reach in water. And Department of Health is the regulating agency for water, and Department of Ecology is for sewer. The affordability for water is 1.5% of median household income. So it's a lower number. And on sewer is 2% of median household income. In this area, sewer is typically more expensive than water. And you see that in your rates as well. So for the numbers for water, the impact on rates, there will be, I'm showing a couple of things here. First, you have a base rate. Your typical residential customer uses 7,000 gallons of water in a 2-month bill. All your bills are for 2 months. And the base rate gets them 5,000 gallons in your base rate. It's currently $42.50, and by your current ordinance will go up to $46.50 in 2015. And that seems reasonable. I don't see a reason to change that. Your average customer then, using 7,000 gallons, they will also go up the same $4 because your rate ordinance increased only the base rate. It did not make any adjustments on the usage of water, okay? Then by 2020, I think the base rate is projected under the scenario that we have to get up to $79, and the average residence, that would mean $95 for 2 months.
Do we want to look at those consumption charges in this analysis?
I think so. I think there's a couple ways, and there's a slide about that as an
Sorry.
option to look at. Good idea. So here, I don't want to be controversial in showing what comparable rates are for your neighbors around, but I think it's important to understand, just as a comparison, we're not using them to set your rates because each community has to fund its own system with its own set of customers, its own set of contracts, and so forth. What this tells me is for sewer, there's some that are higher and some that are lower. For water, the same thing. Some are higher and some are lower. So you're not a big outlier, either way too high or way too low. You're right in the mix of the communities around you. Now let's talk about the rate structure a little bit. On your water, this is residential. I'm showing residential only here. But you have a meter size, 3/4 inch meter, and you have a base rate. Everybody pays a base rate for each time. If you use a very small amount, less than 3,000 gallons, you pay a smaller base rate. The typical uses 3,000 to 5,000 gallons in the base rate, and they pay $42.50. Then we have tiers of water. If you're after 5,000 gallons, up to 30,000 gallons. So that's a very large tier. You pay at $2.10. And then your tiers go all the way up to 150,000 gallons. And they pay $2.50. So wherever you fall, you pay that much. So this is promoting conservation. The more you use, the more you charge. So that's very good. Very good type of rate structure. Works well. I see that the difference between 210 and 250 for such a large volume, it is not very much of a difference. I mean, it gets you there, but that is one area. If you were looking at some ways to make adjustments, that's one area you might look at. On the sewer, you have a flat rate for residential. It doesn't matter how much water you use, you pay the same. This is a very common type of rate structure for sewer. It works very well. It balances between giving stable revenue to the utility and the customer. It gives them predictable bill, and that works very well. So I don't see any reason to change that. Now, options for consideration. Here's things that you can think of. The model, the way I ran it, assumes that you would do the same percentage increase on base rate as your volume rate. I think it's important that way because you want to be sure that all customers are sharing in the increase. And so one thing I see communities look at, income qualified senior discount. There's a couple around, but everyone doesn't have that. And what that means is the customer would have to come in and show and demonstrate that they are low income and senior, and there could be a discount on that. It could be just on the base rate, it could be just on the water rate. So there's all different types of that. Another way to look is to split that lowest tier from 5,000 to 30,000 gallons, make that a bit smaller, so that knowing your average customer uses 7,000 gallons, maybe there's some incentive. Maybe it's 5 to 14,000 gallons, and then when you go up, because you're trying to give a price signal that people have a choice how much water to use, and the cost is tied to that. Another alternative is to adjust the prices on the higher water tiers. Make that variation from 210 to 250. Make that a little steeper. And the last one that it's typical to look at are the base rates for your larger meter sizes. Right now, from your 3/4 inch meter to your 8-inch meter, it's maybe 2 plus times. But they can demand much more than that. And the number I don't have off the top of my head, but it's like maybe 50 times as much they can demand with that. So you could stretch that out as well. What that would do, though, would impact, you know, your larger, your commercial customers and not necessarily your residential, although you could get savings for residential. So with that, I'll be open for questions. And again, what I think, you know, sustainable utilities is really to protect the ratepayers' investment for the future.
Questions?
Who would be like our largest water users?
School
The
district.
school district?
Even though the school district consumption went down dramatically when they did a district-wide low-flow toilet program, but they're still our higher user.
The biggest one.
Kitsap
What about?
County should be a big user too, aren't they?
Which one?
Kitsap County,
Jail.
In the county, yeah.
And perhaps the medical facilities?
In the medical facilities, yeah.
I don't think we've really got any high demand industrial users.
Yeah, that's what I was, yeah. And we charge, commercial the same sewer rate that we do residential?
It's a factor. It's an ERU factor, just similar to the stormwater fees. Am I not correct?
But they're in a tiered, they have a tiered, there's a categorical charge for the different sewer users, residential, commercial. I think there's 15 different categories that somebody gets placed into for their sewer.
That's reviewed annually, as part of the code, which is an annual review of the and then that's reviewed by user.
And we're looking at just the residential.
It's an ERU, so if that equivalent residential
Oh.
unit, so if
Okay,
the
so the $98 we pay a month.
yeah,
is-
a business could be 5 times that.
Okay, that's one IRU, but something like the Comfort Inn is gonna have.
Yes, or an apartment complex.
Right.
They're paying multiples of this, yes.
I have a question. On my handouts, there's 2 slides here. Is there any
Yeah,
slides
there
out?
was, I think, one of it was just the water,
They're,
this,
they're the CIP,
this one for
Yeah.
well,
but I think that they're,
This
these
slide
two
was
that
missing.
he's asking.
okay, but
Yeah.
this was the water, so this one was for water, this sewer one
Is at the bottom.
got cut off somehow, or that is just that, that's
Yeah.
just it, oh, okay, never mind.
But what you're looking at is the CIP. It's very small. If you wanted to go to it, it's in your packet. What you have in your hand there, sir,
Yeah.
in your right hand. Yes,
Okay.
that's maybe easier to read. And that's the water CIP. And it, in the shaded boxes, it lists all of the
Okay.
projects and when they're scheduled. And here for the water, what we've done is taken, the water CIP, they really did a 10-year look. And what I've tried to do is bring down the highest priority projects to the 6 years. And the rest are in years 7 through 10. So the highest priority projects are in the 6th year. The medium priority projects, some are in the 6th year. Many of them are in the 7 through 10 year. And then our lower priority projects are deferred outside of this altogether. And because we're deferring it, we're really trying to put in, what we have is put in $45,000 a year. So a small amount to be set aside, you know, to build towards in the future.
And one important point to make is, because we did get the well 10 DWSRF loan, that a year ago was a $6 million capital program that would have really affected us. Getting that loan, so you see in the 2015, 16, and 17, you're seeing that that's basically our debt service on that loan based on what's programmed for that 3-year, 4-year construction. So benefit to that loan, I think, is pretty evident to the ratepayers having gotten
Yes, I think will be a substantial saving to the ratepayers to take such an expensive project, get that loan in place that's at, off the top of my head, was it 1.5% interest?
it for 2 years or 20 years.
For 20 years. So you borrow the money, they give you the loan proceeds to reimburse you as the construction goes along, and then the next year your debt service starts. And the other chart was for the sewer. Oops.
One of the questions that I have, and I don't know that you can answer this, I'm not sure if Alan or Mark could, but, you know, we recently read where the city of Paulsville developed a special tier for income base. And they had estimated that the number of customers that would qualify for that was, when I read it, it would be awfully small. But as I think about the demographics of Paulsville compared to Port Orchard, maybe it is. I'm not sure if we've ever really taken a look at the demographics of Port Orchard to see if we were to offer something similarly, how many would we estimate could qualify for that reduced rate? I think it would be quite a bit more than 200 that I think Paulsville, if I remember correctly, estimated it would be. But bottom line, I think it's something that we should try to tackle to the extent we can, and I appreciate the fact that when you give relief here, it's got to be made up somewhere else. But I still think it's something that, and I don't have an answer without sitting down there really looking at this thing to try to come up with a rate structure that would recognize, to the extent we can, the low-income individuals.
Are you talking about
We need to do
low
an
senior
analysis.
or just low?
Pardon me?
Are you talking about low senior or just low?
I'm just talking about low, period.
I would say both, yeah.
An income qualification standard.
Exactly, because, you know, a single person, low income is here, a household of 5, you know, the low income level is up here, it's still considered low income. So regardless of age.
Generally speaking, communities are using the federal HUD
Right.
table and allows that to adjust whenever, you know, the federal government adjusts it. And it goes by number of individuals in your home.
Yeah.
And everyone has a little different application process and what you need to provide in terms of income. But the two that are around here that I saw when I was on the ferry, Paulsbo has a 30% discount on sewer and on the water, but it's income qualified seniors or income qualified disabled. They're very specific. That's the most common. And they give 16% discount on the water usage, not on the water base rate, but on the water usage rate up to 1,000 cubic feet, which is about,
7.4 gallons per year.
yeah,
Well, now that you mention it that way, maybe that's why their numbers appear to be low,
yes,
because it's not only income, but it's age as well.
yes. And that's the most common type. Kitsap PUD has a 30% discount on the basic charge, no discount on the water.
Is there?
And again, it's income qualified and senior, and disabled.
Well, personally, I would like us to try to take a look at that and see if there's some way that we can. And if it's common to use age and income, I'm fine with that, but,
You do have something in your code that is different than others, and that's your base rate. That's for 0 to 3,000 cubic feet,
Right.
is a discount from the typical average customer. And so if so that gives the customer some control. But like you say, if there's a family, it might be difficult for them to use that small.
But typically, if you're gonna put an age requirement in there, the family is generally gone.
But John, you brought up a point, and I would like to know what those demographics
Yeah.
are for Port Orchard.
Yeah.
The low income and then also the seniors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would too. And maybe we just go back to the 2010 census and that's as good as it
It
gets.
could be different, yeah.
But at least we could take a look at that and see, obviously we can't get away the farm. You touched on it at the beginning. We have to have a utility that's solvent, bottom line. So whatever you take away down here, you gotta make it up somewhere else along the rates. But it'd be nice to know how big of a differential that is.
Okay, sorry.
I got a comment and a question. One is, how this has been portrayed and sounds tonight, sounds like, we're doing a good job and you're forecasting forward, seems like a reasonable way to go about things. But in looking at both water and sewer and even considering the DOE and the DOH affordability line, we come in most of the time under that affordability line, but in both cases, it seems like we double our rates every 4 years. So while that all sounds good, to me, doubling the rates in 4 years doesn't sound good. So I'm just wondering how everybody's feeling about that, because, if we have to do that, right, because of capital and maintenance items that come before us, yet we're still doubling in 4 years.
It's operations as well. This is operations, maintenance, and capital.
The
See, I don't-
biggest piece is capital. That's what's,
Yeah.
we've done a pretty good job.
And we're saying in 6 years too, not 4.
Well, if you look at the thing though, and look at where we are now, and then look out 4 years, it's really, in 4 years it doubles, if you wanna go through it again, but I just kinda looked at
Are
it.
you looking at water or sewer?
Water and sewer, they both double in about 4 years. It could be a little more in a few months, 4.5 years or less, but it's approximately 4 years, and I'm not saying don't do it, I'm just saying it doesn't, that's kind of,
Doesn't set well with any of us, I don't think.
no, that's gonna be tough
Water's actually
for
3
our
years.
ratepayers. What's that?
This is the water.
Yeah.
Personally, the affordability line is, I don't think, look at it.
And none of the
I
others seem
look at it more as to what's it gonna take to run the system and keep it solvent. And we're not running a Cadillac system, but we've gotta run a system that's gonna be here
Right.
tomorrow, the next day, and the next day. So, and if it requires, you use it for government, but if it requires it, it requires it.
Yeah, and I'm not saying don't do it, I think we, just like Rob says, we have to do it. I understand all that, I'm just saying that, as we were saying this, I was feeling, man, it's good, but when I was looking at it, what it was, it's not
Still a
gonna
lot.
feel very good, even
Yes.
if we are solvent and looking solid, is the way to say it. The ratepayers are still gonna go, ouch.
Yes.
Well, the slippery slope too is that we're taking today's projects and to soften the blow on the sewer side, we're stretching the repayment of that over 20 years.
Well 10, or no, not well 10, but the other capital.
The other capital projects. Now, the saving, so then how do you pay for your future capital? Beyond 5-6 years from now, because now you've taken all your rates and are paying for today's project. But we do have the 10-year
Yeah, I know.
step conversion that at the end of this capital cycle will have 600,000 a year.
350.
Excuse me, 350 coming back to us because that project will be
Program will be
finished.
finished, yeah.
And we'll be able to use that for our capital going forward, so it should soften future
Yeah, you have the city hall.
rate increases. So it's not great, but
No,
it's
it's still gonna be a big,
it's a
hurt.
big,
It's
big
factored
row.
into.
Yeah, it's showing us operations,
Okay.
tax paid out.
Can you go to the slide that had the recommendations? I'm interested in the increase in fees for the more water usage, for the more you use.
Tiers?
That is that one. Have you done an elasticity study to show at what point people will really start to use less water and what that might do to the collection of the fees? when they started using less water. I mean, if there's a big break between 5,000 and 10,000, and people say, well, I can cut my water bill in half if I go below 5, and, you know, I'm not sure people would or could, but is there been any research in that area?
We have not gotten down to that level of analysis yet. If that's the direction, then
Yeah, I think the
We will
fact
do
that
that.
you've kind of hit the nail on the head that there was a very large, so we put in that 0 to 3,000, that 2850. I remember when we had that rate conference, we put that specifically for the very conservative, give them a break. And then, but the range still from the 5 to the 30, that's a big gap. I think Katie's identified that if the average is 7, then by cutting those tiers and slicing that so that you have a better, so you can be rewarded for hitting under that mark is, you know, looking at that. I think we've identified that as an area to potentially save money for those that are conserving.
and we think that the data is in the billing system, that it can be gotten out and we can look at that, and that's typical.
I mean, if the average household usage is 71 or 72, I think whatever you said,
I said 7,000 because your rates are per 1,000 gallons.
okay.
So I went to around 7,000 as a round number.
So my thought would be if the average use is 7, I think those ranges are huge. They're just too big and they're not capturing, I think, what we're trying to do, which is both fund the sustainability issue that we have, and then, you know, the more you use, the more you pay. That's a, you know, 25,000 gallon. I know it's per 1,000 gallons at
We
210,
mean like a
but that's
5
a
to 10
huge
and a
tier.
10
Yeah,
to 20
or
to 20 to 30.
or if the average is 7 to 14, 14 to 21, or, you know, something that is based on our current usage.
So you're saying get more out of people that use more?
Yeah. if you-
Well, and I would say that kind of too, except for one thing, that's when we started talking about hospitals and school districts and stuff,
Yeah.
that, you know, they're not using it to abuse it, they're using it because they have to use it, so.
But the tier we're talking about is the residential, right?
That's
They're in
residential.
the higher
Oh, I see.
end already. We're
Right.
talking about creating a tier that's
So no
5.
commercial is even on here, is there?
It is, but it's
But
already.
it's way up into
it's
50
way up
to
in the-
100, 100 to 150.
What we're talking about is in that 5 to 30,000 category, making more subcategories within there.
Then, yeah.
If the average is 7, maybe it's 5 to 7, or it's 5 to 8. And then the next tier is 8 to 15, you know, 15 to 20.
And more than a 10-cent increase,
Yeah,
I think, would help offset. Because then you're gonna have to raise, I think, the rates anyways to collect, but then you're really driving the usage in a smart way where, you know, people can afford to use more and they want to pay more.
Yeah,
They
no
can,
big deal if they
but
have
you
the
give
money.
them the tier choices in there, I think a little bit more tier choices.
Well, I really appreciate what you're saying, Jeff, because I'm looking at it more of setting a reasonably attainable goal for reducing your consumption.
Yes,
So if the average is 7, maybe we just get down to 6 and you're gonna save some money,
yes.
as opposed to get down all the way below 5 before you see it. And I don't know if that's, you know, how achievable that is, but
I think if we
we set
establish,
those milestones at an achievable level.
Gonna have a lot of brown lawns come a couple years, but, you know, that's,
Yeah.
you know.
How did we come up with the 210 per thousand?
Excuse me?
How did we come up with the 210 rate per thousand at the
We set that.
5,000? Oh, okay. Because it seems very low after the jump to the 42 for 5,000.
those are I think those are the discussions we need to have.
That's additional,
Yeah,
I
it's
know.
additional,
yeah, for every 1,000 gallons over the 5,000, it's an additional.
So you don't really pay a consumption of the
But for the-
additional until you get over 5,000.
Over 5,000.
And
I
so
think
was
they're
part of the
doing
talks
adding a tier
suggesting we go to
to
7,000
reward those that
and have a
are.
third step? Is
Yeah,
that what we're
probably
saying?
maybe a couple of them in there.
Right in there?
Well, it also brings down the cost to those that can fit in, that are trying and can fit in. And then the ones that choose to pay more will pay more, and all of it will, and that can offset, you know, a lower rate or holding it lower for the small user.
Or pay for.
And or pay for the low-income
Low-income
discount
program.
that we
Yeah,
might provide.
Exactly.
It addresses the issue that came out during the last water rate discussion, which was where the people that were conserving water somehow subsidizing the larger commercial users. And I think by breaking that tier at that line, that really does address that issue.
Thank you, Jerry.
Now, a question that I had,
I've got a lot of words in my head here, I'm just, you're hearing from me.
This is a 20-minute discussion.
one thought for you to consider is the existing ordinance adjusts the base rate and water again in 2015 and does not address the water. And that's an opportunity maybe for you to, come up with what we're gonna come up with on the volume side and put that in as well.
Don't like it, but I agree.
So where do we go from here? I guess we're asking to have some additional analysis done on these,
Demographics?
well, demographic information as well as
In what,
looking at what makes sense for breaking that 5 to 30
those, yeah,
tiers.
And what if we don't do the capital projects?
What was that
Well,
definition?
You gotta remember that the
I just
key,
said, what if we don't do any capital projects? I mean, how,
I think,
are we still able to flush
Maybe
it
now or
out
maybe
just
later.
in water?
well,
Moratoriums.
I think, right, you're looking at two issues. One is the potential for a moratorium. I mean, without well 10 and the city of Bremerton water during this, remember you did the ILA for the next
Right.
6 years. Without that ILA and well 10 moving ahead, we would be looking at a moratorium. So that's one issue. If we didn't do the capital projects, there'd be a point in which we would say, we have a moratorium, we'll be turning away growth. The other,
sewer side, I mean, that's why this is so drastic, is because we haven't addressed capital for years or the rates. We've felt that the economic conditions, we've been pulling
Since
back on the reins,
2009.
since 2008 or 9.
Years.
And this is the price for it.
now the other key piece to remember though is 2016, we need to have a financially constrained plan. So we either have to fund the capital and the operations, or we need to remove those projects from the list. And the first thing that we did with the engineers is we not only took a second look at all the capitals, looked at the numbers, but between the first and the second utility committee meeting, we really prioritized them again. We took projects that, okay, you know what? Well, one is the STEP program was funded in operations, so that we adjusted that. The other thing we looked at was what we really had budgeted for 15, and we shifted some things out, and we moved some projects that, some water main replacements and other things that we knew that could come in the next 6 years. So we're really in this zone where to have a financially compliant GMA approved comprehensive plan, we're gonna have to either defer capital out or fund it.
And actually, the initial capital list we got, utility committee, was much larger. And we said,
We,
no way, we can't.
we adjusted those out. So now they're out there still. We're not saying, oh, we're just not gonna do it. We're gonna look at it in the next 6 year cycle.
Can't afford it now.
But like Katie said, getting this funding sustainable, get the utility sustainable now, creates the ability to now have this thing moving ahead so that when we get to that next 6 year cycle, there's actually funding to start looking at debt service. Now that's a huge paradigm shift for the city. I mean, well 10, I know we have City Hall and the sports, but in general, projects have usually been funded out of cash. And to look at really leveraging the city with the revenue from these rates that are gonna pay down the debt service that allow us to actually get these projects off the list. Now, that's a big step, but I think it's a step that the city really needs to take, because.
So we also have to recognize that we're fixing today's problems and paying for it tomorrow.
Exactly.
So when a problem comes up tomorrow,
That's correct.
we're still paying for yesterday's fix.
Right. But I think in the last well, I've been here almost 7 years now, time flies. The world of grants has really just gone away. I mean, there were grants you'd hear, Bremerton, Port Orchard, you know, there were grants. The grants have just literally gone away. And to some degree, I'm hoping that the loans continue.
Yes.
But there's even conversations about the loans I mean, Public Works Trust Fund wasn't funded. I know that Snohomish County is currently looking at creating their own revolving fund as a county, because they know that funding, really, the sources now are dwindling to the point to where they're just saying, as a county, we're gonna look at our own borrowing capacity and start doing our own revolving program. I mean, to me, that's a fairly substantial decision. That's,
But how would you do that when the utility has to be a standalone entity? So the utility is setting up a revolving fund?
yeah,
That's a county.
That's the county.
County government, though.
that's a county.
But they're still utility, aren't they?
Well, this is a transportation.
Oh, okay, all right. Not-
But my point is that they're looking at future funding sources, whether they're loans or grants, is dropping off, and to try to be more self-sustainable.
Understood.
Now,
Now,
our well 10 was a 20-year loan, is that
Yes.
correct? And when we're looking at the revenue to actually do the sewer projects, we will look at loans on those.
we always apply for loans and grants.
Okay, what my question is what's the amortization difference between a 15-year or a 10-year and a 20-year? You know, how much more debt service is that to us, so that we don't have quite as much on the back side?
Right.
I know that the rates, that usually, and correct me if I'm wrong, because you're on the Public Works Trust Fund board, right? Was. I think when they give you an
In the
option.
good days.
They give you an option, they give you a 10-year or a 20, correct?
No, typically it's 20 years is their standard amortization. Unless you're doing a project that doesn't last for 20 years, then it has to be the life of the project. On ecology loans, that's on the sewer side, you can get a lower interest rate if you have between 1 to 5 years, or maybe up to 15. But the standard is pretty much 20 years. And their thinking is the programs, the SRF, state revolving loan programs on both sides, are trying to assist the communities in getting the projects done and to minimize that impact on rates. And so it's thought that over 20 years, that money comes back into the fund and then is reloaned out for the next project. So they have their programs are set up around that 20 years, and it's at 1.5% to 3.5% interest. So very small interest that is a savings over if you were to sell bonds. If you sell bonds, you sell them today to do the project this year, and you start paying interest today. The loans are good because you borrow the money today, you do your project, it takes you 2 years to do your project, your loan repayment starts that next year. So it gives you essentially 3 years or an extra year to ramp your rates up to take that into account.
I would say, though, if there were no loan programs through the state that do exactly as Katie described, then if you went to the private markets, if you went to Wall Street, that very analysis that you were speaking to of how long the cost of your debt, even though you go out further on your debt, you get out there and your interest rate goes up on the end of it. So you have to just do an analysis whether it's 12 to 22 to 25 years. So that's more on the private market side than say on these government loan packages.
And it's very important on the private to do
I
that.
was making on the back side.
That one slide showed if we tried to cash flow it, instead of doubling the sewer rates, we were tripling the sewer rates about 3 years out. If we would have added $7 to $10 to our rates 5 to 6 years ago, we could probably afford to cash flow this, you know, and still only have a comparable rate increase. We could, you know, our heart was in the right place.
Minds were.
It's just one of those pay me now or pay me double
Yeah.
later, right?
Exactly.
And so so I think we're really faced with on the sewer side, I don't think we have much choice other than to borrow the money unless we want to triple the rates.
Well, the timing's right now. The input is here. That's where, as a policy board, you're putting the input into the comp plan. And then the output's gonna be when Mark, and when we put into the budget, that project for Mark to actually, work on. So this is the real raw input. We'll have the outcome when in 3 years, or 2 or 3 years, when you start the project. This is the first time the city's been in this situation where you have this kind of analysis that goes into your comp plan. It's gonna roll out into the finance committee to put into the budget and be approved by the council. And everybody's gonna be remember this conversation in 3 years when that comes out the other side.
So John brought up a good question, what's the next step? I think we want to look at these tiers. Is that-
Well, I guess that's one thing I gotta look at right now. So Katie, I'll need, I don't know where you're at with your current budget. I think your contract is at the end of this year.
I think so.
I think so. So one thing I'll probably have to look at is extending into January, February, and then obviously we didn't budget for that, but we'll have to, I may be coming back in January, first or second meeting with, you know, additional $5,000 or something, just to have closure. And, you know, and we can operate that out of, obviously, you know, the fringe on the water sewer.
And we're looking at different, looking at the tiers differently and looking at
Some programs.
a program that would help a group of folks.
And Nick, would you be able to dig out the census data for demographic information?
Yeah, I think we could probably find that, I guess before January work study, is that when we're gonna take this up again?
January,
Or
February.
whatever.
Probably February.
We'll coordinate amongst us.
The important thing is just going to get contract time extension. I can do that without coming to council, but it'll be the financial change order 2 will be, because I'll need to extend your contract before it expires. So I'll do that
Right,
tomorrow.
yeah.
But then it'll be a time only, and then we'll just deal with getting together on scope and additional fee to carry this into February or so.
One question will be how many council meetings to come to.
She tries to struggle.
Look, we need another presentation, we just want some more information.
Yeah.
I think we can. You can
Do we
bring that
just
up
bring it
with
back to
Mark and
utility?
with Mark instead of you.
Why don't we set it up so in case you did have to come back, you could, but if not,
Yeah,
Right, yes.
I'd rather do
I
it
mean, we could
right.
also, and do you want to see these back at utility committee first, or just come back?
Council's call,
Cuts down the cost, just bring it back to the council.
yeah,
I think,
Just,
probably
bring
makes
back
more
to the
sense
full
to get back to
okay,
full
so
council.
just back to a work study.
maybe save a little bit.
Okay, we'll work on that.
Do you guys have questions?
Very good. Thank you. Right on time. There's a lot of information. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Good listeners, and it's complex, and not an easy answer either.
Yeah. Jerry has a question?
I don't know if that's what it is. ERUs are a very archaic system. Seems like water in and water out should be more on the sewer. Those people that use more should pay more on the sewer system. I have a neighbor who has 2 rentals, Social Security plus his rental income, but he has stopped watering his yard and planting flowers because he's having to pay for 3 ERUs. Whereas a family that has 1 ERU and a couple of teenagers probably uses twice the water that he's pushing out of his house with his rentals because the people aren't there. They're out where he does not provide any laundry services. So to me, I think you also need to be thinking, what are you putting into the sewer system and who's impacting it the most instead of you got 3 toilets in 3 different places, so so you have to pay more. It seems very archaic, something that started 50, 60 years ago, and it's no longer, should be part of the equation. Thank you.
I think we learned when we were financing the sewer treatment plant initially that there isn't a perfect system regardless. I mean, some are gonna argue that some of the water that comes in through the meter does not go out in the sewer, it's sprinkled on the lawn or the flowers, or it goes out in steam in my dryer, or whatever. When we financed the sewer treatment plant, we did an assessment, based on acreage. City of Bremerton did it on revenue. And I remember going to one meeting where people in Bremerton were just furious because they were suggesting that their sewer rates are based on the water coming in, and it's, you know, they came up with every reason why it shouldn't be that way. So I don't know that it's a perfect system. Either way has its flaws.
And
It'd be nice if we had a meter that really worked on the sewer pipe that went out, so you could truly measure it, but
I know some jurisdictions, and correct me if I'm wrong, some jurisdictions still do a sewer rate based on water consumption.
Yes.
Bremerton.
Yeah, and they'll have landscape meters for irrigation that are separate from water.
But they usually pay a lot more.
Yeah, Bremerton, you can go there, their rates are very high, but it's based on water, and people are equally dissatisfied with that methodology, just because they come up with every reason why. Some of the water that comes in, I drink, and then I go to my office in another town, and, I mean, there's all kinds of reasons.
Our system, would it not encourage irrigation as opposed to discouraging it by not billing sewer based on usage? Seems to me that by having a flat sewer rate.
By having a flat sewer rate, it doesn't really send any pricing signal in terms of your usage of water. It is a flat rate. Your contract and how much the city pays for sewer treatment is based on an ERU. And you report the usage and the number of ERUs, and that's how you're paying for your share of the treatment plant. So
Which is
it's,
calculated based on water usage.
you're counting up the number of residential units you have, and each residential unit pays one ERU. Your
Right, but isn't the
commercial- your-
residential unit, I forget the number, 750 gallons of water is
There's a DOH.
equivalent to one ERU, and that's how that calculation gets done on an annual basis. They look at water usage and do that equation, but
Yeah, there's standardized flow rates for
Yeah.
out of the DOE manual, the orange manual.
Yep, yep.
It establishes an ERU, and then that equates then to a measurable ERU for commercial.
okay.
Thank you again, I appreciate it.
And I was very impressed with your Christmas lights down at the marina and here at City Hall. It's very, looks very nice.
Well, thank you, and that's a cooperative effort with merchants downtown, with the Bremerton Ports, and with the City of Port Orchard.
Excellent, very nice.
Pretty neat, isn't it?
Yes,
Pretty
it
bright.
is.
Thank you.
Thank you, happy holidays.
Okay, we'll move on. Public records, email accounts. That's mine. I put that on there. Allow me to read the executive summary. As mentioned on the December 9, 2014 council meeting, I am concerned about the risk the city faces with not being able to access and retain city records when council members use their personal email accounts, and I see they left out other business accounts for city-related matters. Based on the feedback I received from the council, you share my concerns. In the light of reducing the city's liability and participation of potential violations of the Public Records Act, I have directed staff to do the following. All employees are required to correspond with elected officials using city-assigned email accounts. City personnel policies are to be updated to reflect this change. IT will put in place a software program to allow elected officials to use their personal electronic devices to access their city-assigned emails, and that is something we're going to be talking about. And Vince Tucker's here and Alan Martin are here to talk along, on that subject with us. And basically, the background is, we all know it's the Bainbridge Island case where $500,000 was a fine that was levied against them because council members used their personal email accounts and the city was not able to produce those when required. So that's the action I took. The background is, about 9 months ago, or maybe longer, we talked about this, and everybody at the council, well, not everybody, the ones that did mention, they preferred to use their own comfortable email accounts. Now I have
I don't believe that's an accurate statement. I think we all said that the system we have is archaic, and we wanted to use our personal
Right, well,
devices.
allow me, I've got the floor at the moment. Anyway, what happened then was that I talked to the attorney that we had then, and I've talked to the attorney that we have now, and they both seem to agree that the buck stops with me, not with you, and that when the auditors leave this building, they always ask me, is there anything I should know about that you know about that I didn't look at? And I don't know if they've ever asked any one of you that, but they ask me that every year. And I have to look at them and say, no, there isn't anything. Well, this is something I can't look at them and say, no, there isn't anything. I think this is a problem. So that's why I've done what I can do, and that's order staff to do this, in the hopes that we can work some kind of an agreement out. But to be honest with you, for 4 years or 3.5 years, however many, 3 years, I've used my email account and I haven't had any trouble accessing it. And I don't use anything else. So I don't see the problem. I see a lot of resistance to want to change, but I don't really see the problem. So anyway, that's where we're at the moment. And we do have an idea, is that correct, Vince? That might work and solve this dilemma, so yes.
At what point are you going to open comments up to the council, Mr. Mayor?
As soon as I introduce Vince.
Thank you.
Okay.
Because I have a concern. I have a public server at Kitsap Transit. And the day I swore in, I told Brandy, use that public server. Do not use my public email address, my private email address. What this tells me is before you had a solution that the council had an opportunity to weigh in on, you directed staff to quit sending emails to where we asked our emails to be sent.
Yes, I did.
You did. So now we do not have information coming to us that we were due.
Actually, it's coming to your city email account.
But it's not coming to us. You know full well some of us don't access our city email account.
I
You
do
made
know.
a unilateral decision without this council's input to cut communications off from the council.
No, I did not cut any communications off. You have an access to it. You just refuse to use it, Councilman. You refuse to use it because, and I don't know why you personally refuse to
Did I
use it.
say I refused to use it?
No, then
Have
I
I
didn't
ever-
cut you off, did I?
Yes, you did.
No, I didn't.
We're talking about how often I go there.
I have no idea how often you go there.
Please don't yell at me. Okay, that's the first thing I'd like to bring up. The second thing that I'd like to bring up is my understanding of the Bainbridge Island isn't the fact that people were using private emails. It's they refused to surrender their computers.
No, actually, it was that the city had no control over where that information was
Because the
stored.
council members refused to give up their hard drives. That's why they were sued. Had they complied with the Public Records Act, this wouldn't have happened.
Well,
So this
actually,
is a
we're not going to try that case now, I don't think.
This is a misstatement. That's what I'm pointing out. It wasn't the fact that some council members did business on their computers. It was the fact that they refused to surrender that information. That's the nexus.
Well, the
of what happened.
debate shouldn't be a debate on it because I was able to do this by my authority as the mayor. And I did. So that's the end of the story on it. There is no debate.
I said my 2 cents.
Okay. Now, Vince, what can we do that would allow us to do everything we need and still keep a good control of the records?
Certainly. Well, thank you very much for inviting me to speak to you this evening. To start with, per the mayor's directive, we're moving to improve your level of access to your city email system. Currently, we have 3 ways in which to receive email at your City of Port Orchard account. One is, of course, internally at a workstation. 2 is via our website portal, or 3 is through a city-owned mobile device. I'd like to kind of begin with a short review of our city web email, just to kind of remind folks and let some of you who haven't played with it get an idea of just how basic it is and fairly simple to use. You'll notice I have a handout that I gave you, your initial how to start and log into the system for a first time. But this is accessible at any computer across the world, as long as you've got access to a web browser. I have a head shaking, but
No, because I use this portal regularly, and it does not work on all devices. Sometimes you'll get a security block, and you can't get to it.
Yeah,
okay.
There's, and I'd like to add that I couldn't log on for 4 hours this morning.
You could, because most of the internet was down for 4 hours this morning. Because the city was offline for that length of time.
Right, and I came and saw you and got it all reset, and this morning I could not log on for 4 hours.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, the entire city was down to a major internet failure up at the county or outside the county at Wave Broadband, so there was no way to get to the system. That I know of, this application works under the key operating systems and browsers on the market today. It's optimized for Internet Explorer. Firefox works well with it. Safari, Chrome, all function with this application. It's simply going to a website. If I can spell right. We go into it, and if any of you have ever used Microsoft Outlook, you'll see that it's almost a spitting image of your Microsoft Outlook. We have our inbox showing me I have 6 messages. I can turn on my preview pane over here if I prefer to see it, or turn it off. But we have emails that you can read, simply reply, so all your citizens' email would be there waiting. If you wanted to CC another staff member, here's all your city employees. And send away. I've just replied to those people. Your calendar shows up, shows you have access. You have a meeting coming up. You can snooze and draft. Your calendar access, of course, is located over here. And here's your monthly calendar. I just placed a simple meet the council in there to start. When you write an email, for example, I'll go back to my email. And again, you just simply click on new, place in who you want to type or send to. If you go to the default global address list, this is all the employees of city, or you can build your own custom address list, and you can choose from those as well. Let's see, calendar, contacts. I'll go to contacts real quick. I've just placed contacts in there. Tasks, documents, public folders is stuff you won't use, but mail and calendar are the 2 key things I find most folks have. And this will simply allow you to go through and read it and reply. Reply to all. Include anyone you wish to include. I can add Alan as a contact, add in more information. I'll save that. And so now under contacts, we'll see I have not only me. Well, I lied. Did I save it?
No.
I must have misclicked there. Add as contacts. And now I should be able to save and close. It may not take him being part of the main group. Oh, there we are. I added him twice. So you can build your own list under contacts of all your constituents that you prefer to talk to. That's pretty much it. The only trick with Outlook, the web access, of course, is over here. We have to be sure to log off. This secures your computer to where it leaves no residual files. This is basically something that is inside our organization and usable. If you have anyone that's needing, if they've forgotten their passwords or anything like that, I'll work with Brandy. We'll certainly get you set up so you can get logged in and get your passwords. Let's see, I don't know if you have any questions on the web Outlook side of the house. If I went a little too quick for you or anything along those lines. Okay. The next thing we were looking at was, of course, moving forward to mobile devices. And the mayor's asked us to look at a bring your own device world. This is an up and coming industry, and we have a product by the name of MOS 360 that we're going to bring online. This is actually an IBM product. It's rated as one of the most leading products on the market today. This allows us to use or provide bring your own device anywhere inside our city, depending, even department independent, it doesn't care. It secures email, yet provides it on all platforms out there today. Let's see if I can go here. Basically, in analyzing the needs of our organization, this is by far the best product that answers the needs of our city. It's rated, it's a leading industry, leader in the industry, and we have other organizations such as King County, Whatcom County, cities such as Auburn, Bremerton, Maple Valley, Spokane, Tacoma, Woodinville. These are all folks using this product currently. This product will be fairly easy to roll out and maintain. I suspect we'll have these rolled out and functional by about the 7th of January.
I think that's what we've been asking for 2 or 3 years.
Correct. This is the same product I brought to you approximately 8 months ago. You may recall.
I downloaded it at that time, actually, and I've been waiting to be able to use it.
Right.
So is it software or hardware?
This is actually an application that will go on all your mobile devices. It is not platform specific, so if you've got a Windows phone, if you've got an Android, if you've got an iPhone, this will actually download to all of them.
How many devices can we put in on?
We're going to start off with a 20 licensed device, but it's expandable to any number. There are organizations out there with over 500 devices.
I mean, me personally, because I would want it on at least 2 or 3 devices.
Then we can certainly license accordingly.
And the advantage of this device independent system is that all the information is stored on the server?
Correct. It's actually the technical term, it's in a container. You actually have to launch an app on your device. It will require you to authenticate into the app, and it will open up your email and your calendar functions once you're in that app. We have, through the remote capabilities, as you decide to move on or not go for re-election, or if an employee is retired, of simply disabling that app and it vanishes from your phone. There's no damage to your personal information. There's no encroachment on your personal device, and that was key to us as well.
If you lose, the other piece is a security piece. If you lost, if Alan Martin lost his phone and I have the app on there, I can tell you and you can turn off that app.
It's very, very exact in what we can do. If you say, I think I've lost it, then what I can do is simply remove the city app and leave your personal data there. You call back, say, oh, Vince, I found it in the back seat of the car. I press another button, the app reappears on your phone. If you say, I know I left it on the bus in Seattle and it's gone, I can actually wipe and lock your entire mobile device if you ask me to do so. So it's anywhere from very narrow protection to you want your device protected all the way out as well.
The system works well with the county connection we have.
Yes, it does. Yeah, the connection, you know, obviously, as we were pointed out today, we had a unique glitch to where we lost all internet connectivity for a period of about 4 hours. That was not fun for any of us today, but during those time frames, this app would not function either.
Right, nothing was working.
Yeah, it's got to get back to our server, and if that link is down, that's going to be it.
Mayor,
Yes.
I think the big issue is responding to emails. How we receive our information is something that I think we are going through a lot of material. It should be easy to access. If we're not responding on our personal emails, then there should be no problem with receiving the information. And personally, if this is what you're reducing us to, is working with a system that has been difficult, then I'm going to ask that every single email actually be printed and put in my box. Every email. For the record.
I was thinking that might not be a bad idea until the new system is up and running, because it sounds like in the interim, a lot of us will not be able to be getting communications that we would normally be getting from the staff.
We are, and you sent emails to the city account that wasn't being used. We have information already that we have not accessed. Because you made a policy change before even alerting us to the fact that you made a policy change, which I find unacceptable. I do not think that is your job. It is your job to get us the information we need so that we can do our job and not make it difficult.
Right, it just crowded over onto my responsibility here, and I took it for what it was.
Fear
I'm the
factor.
one that ultimately will be responsible if we don't have,
Ultimately?
yes,
Oh.
yes, truly. So,
Mayor
if,
Bainbridge is responsible.
We don't have a mayor. They have
Well,
an
they
appointed
do,
mayor.
they have appointed mayor,
Yeah.
still.
the problem with it is when we get sued, you don't get sued individually, the city gets sued.
Well, no, I think none of us want to pay $500,000 fee as Bainbridge Island did, but I would actually concur with what Jeff said earlier, is that the issue is a little different than just them using their personal
Well,
accounts.
it could be a little different, but I
I
interpreted
think,
it
I think your
as-
solution actually is a good one. I think it's probably being rolled out a little too abruptly, and I think that's where we're
Well,
having heartburn.
after talking to attorneys, I'm scared. Frankly, I'm scared that if I don't do it, once I realized what the potential damage could be, I'm responsible.
Actually, why isn't the city attorney here?
Yeah, that would be helpful.
She's had a council meeting in another place. But I'm not blaming it on her, I'm blaming it on me. I'm saying I was the one that made the determination. That's the one, if you like your emails in your box, we'll put them in your box.
I would like that also.
Yeah, I would too.
That bond paper, that's,
Good.
when we get a system that's gonna work, I'd rather do that.
I
If-
think that would be the safest thing, just
Yep.
make sure that we got it.
If I may interject real briefly, with our current system, we don't have access to your email. That's behind your username and password. So what I would have to do through the system is perhaps set up a split to where it goes to your inbox and perhaps goes to the city clerk so that she would have access to it.
There wasn't anything wrong with what was happening before. And most of the emails that I got go to my city address and go to my personal email. So that, and then I could see them either place, and if it needed a response, I personally go to the city one and respond from the city one. But all of the litigation that you're concerned with was already being taken care of, because it was, they were sending them to both emails. But the council had access on the second one they were using.
And if you responded from your personal email, the directive was to CC your city email.
Right.
Correct.
Which creates a public
A
record.
public record.
Correct. And that's what's been happening with me.
Yeah, so we
I
have
get
a
it at
workaround.
KT,
Right.
I get it at the city of Port Orchard, I can sit at my desk at work and respond back to the city. It goes through and stays on the city server. There was no need for me not to get information on Monday afternoon because staff was directed to only send it to the city of Port Orford email. That's my issue. We were already working under the assumption that everything needed to be CC'd through the city clerk or through our email account. And I've been working under that.
The problem is wherever it goes from your private email or your business email account, we don't have access to.
You do. You gave us the direction and the council made an agreement that if we were doing.
I never heard the agreement.
Let me finish, please. Let me finish, please. You just heard multiple council members in here say, we have been working since this was provided 8 months ago as an interim basis, that if we do city business, whether it's at Kitsap Transit or whether it's on a personal email account, and we respond to that, it goes through the city server by either CCing our own city email account or the city employee that we're talking to. And I've been complying with that. I can't speak with everybody else. But it upset me, Mr. Mayor, to find out, to get a phone call late on a Monday, that information that was supposed to be sent to me as the chair of the ad hoc committee for the city attorney selection process was not sent to me during the normal course that's been operating for the last year. Because you made a unilateral decision to cut communication off with the council member. That's not right. I'm sorry. That's just not right. You could have at least come here tonight and told us tonight, this is what you'd like to do effective some future date, and give us an opportunity to address that. You made a unilateral decision to cut us off at the knees, to do it your way or no way. And we still don't have the application that we asked for 8 months ago. That's not working with the council, Mr. Mayor. That is absolutely not working with us.
Sorry, the council wasn't working with me either for 8 months. You may have been doing what you just said, and so should some of the other. I have no idea about that. I haven't asked for an affidavit from you each month, but that's what it will take. I mean,
You get an affidavit whenever there's a Public Request Act sent to us. We sign an affidavit that we either do or we don't have information. And we provide where the information resides. Each and every one of us says that.
I think we have a solution here if we get this system up and running, and we'll have to worry about how we get those emails, I guess. At least temporarily.
What if we go with your new policy when we get the new system on January 7th, as Ritzy said? And in the meantime, we carry on as usual, where it's sent to our city account, but it's also copied to the account that we use more regularly for the next 3 weeks. How would that be as a compromise?
As long as everybody agrees that they don't, well, the problem with it is, though, it's connecting the dots with those other accounts.
It's not as, I understand the certainty that you prefer having all the records in-house, and I think we're moving to that, but I think for the next 3 weeks, we could continue in the fashion we have, and then we'll get the new one.
As you say, if we get a public records request, that's the first thing we'll do is ask for all those records, for those 3 weeks.
As you have been doing for months.
And we've actually had a better record than Bainbridge, because we have provided emails from our accounts, non-city accounts. We have provided everything that's been requested.
See, I guess maybe the problem is it's not a debate here in this room.
No, I think your
as
system
it's
is
the public records laws and courts and things like that that are completely out of all of our control.
I believe we're complying. We're CCing our city account, we're just creating the record. Brandy, isn't that what you asked us to do? And we would be in compliance with the Public Records Act. If we respond to an email that staff wrote us, if I CC my city email account, it is rare that I have a business need to conduct city business via email. It's information coming to me 99% of the time. There's an occasion, scheduling a meeting, something of that nature,
Or
where,
answer
where I need to
Randy.
respond, and when I do, I CC my city email box.
Well,
It
let
doesn't
me ask
happen
the
very often.
question, that if the staff sends us a question and we respond back to the staff,
It's in-
doesn't the city have a copy of it?
Yeah, that's,
We're only talking about those that if we respond to a constituent, or if we're conducting city business amongst ourselves, or some goofy
Which I
thing
don't do
that you
anymore.
need,
You don't?
I don't either. But we have to CC our account, so the city has a record of it. I'm assuming we're all compliant with that.
Yes.
So the scenario I gave you, are we not compliant with the Public Records Act? And do you not have a record?
You're complying as long as the requester doesn't request the metadata. If they request the metadata, then you're not in compliance because we'd have to get the metadata from the server that it was sent from via the business or a personal computer because that's where the metadata is stored from.
You send out a request, you have a public records request, and you send it out to us individually, do we not send that information if we have anything to you?
Yes, you do.
So if it's a public records request, historically, you've sent out an email and say, okay, we need all the emails or whatever for X, Y, and Z. If we have it, we send it to you.
Correct.
So then you would have it.
Yes.
So where are we not in compliance?
well, we don't have a city attorney to talk about that, so. Just winging it.
Well, we have this tentative solution that Vince has brought up, and potentially it can be operational the first part of January, but I believe Mr. Allen may have financial data that goes with that. Or do they provide this to us free of cost?
There's a cost to the software, and what was the amount of that?
For 20 licenses, approximately $2,000 is an annually renewable license. About $2,000 per device.
Should have had a year.
I prefer paper, it's cheaper.
I did present that figure to you 8 months ago, and you felt at that time if it was an unbudgeted item, you did not want it.
Well, for such little business, I mean, I've been on my city email account one time, when they came down, however long ago that was.
That I don't know.
I don't even know what my password is to get in there, it just doesn't work. So the only thing that I ever get is when the staff sends me a question or something, and I respond back to them with.
I don't conduct business for anybody else.
I don't do anything on my home computer, we answered my own email, but, you know, they send in questions in my office. And we have all the hardware and software, that we're a public agency, we have to do the same thing. We have to retain records. And that's where if you call me with a public records request and you send one, it's fairly easy for my IT guy just to go push the button on whatever that piece of hardware is, and we get all the information shipped to you, if there is.
Okay. In lieu of having to come up with a whole system of printing those out, we will probably just continue for the next 3 weeks and unless there's there's somebody that's against buying this system.
What's the cost for over 20 devices?
The basic cost is about $100 per device. I think once you break the $25 point, you drop down to something like $90 per device. It is a tiered, and then I think they jump up to these things like a 250 level. But yeah, I think by the time we hit 22 devices, we just buy 25 licenses because it's the same price.
$100 a year?
I'm sorry.
It's $100 a year?
100 a year per device.
Well, it's cheaper than getting us all devices.
Well, that's another
Which
solution.
would be the third solution, which we don't want. We do not want to carry around another device. I don't think we also want a workstation that we have to come into in City Hall to access our email. Part of what I want is just convenience. And I think this actually addresses that.
Another point I'd like to bring up with the financial side too is that we have directors that are not happy or just would prefer a different cell phone than the one city issues. So if they fall back to their own cell phone and we plant this software on it, we're gonna save almost $100 a month in city cell phone costs. So some of this software will actually pay for itself by allowing people to utilize it on their own devices.
Rather than carrying the city phone to get into their email.
Correct. They would just simply fall back to using their own phone of their own of choice. This software product would go on it, and of course the city would now just take the city phone and stop the service, and that almost pays the savings right there.
So another question I have is this device, does it work, like say I have a Verizon account,
Mhm.
okay? Am I gonna end up paying data charges?
Yes, you will.
Okay, now on my Verizon, I can also pick it up on Wi-Fi, and maybe that's the difference when I tried to get into my city email on one of my other devices, I can't because of security, and maybe that's the way it's trying to.
Possibly. Now, can you tell me what phone you're using, and maybe perhaps it's something I could use or help you with at some point?
I bring the two devices I wanted on.
Okay, but this actual platform should solve all of this. The company that controls and helps us set it up is all the way across the existing mobile platform right now, which is the great blessing of this company. iOS can change tomorrow. These people are on it that same day. So.
What I'm gonna say to the council is, if it's, I think getting a license for 20 is, if we're gonna give it to staff too, is not enough.
It's not enough.
Because I would want it on my phone, I also want it on the tablet I use.
I'm gonna start it on the city side then. Let's see how it works and possibly put it on my phone.
I'm not sure yet what I'm gonna do.
So you'd want to count, you'd want to count of numbers.
Now, is that the only way? Can I still go to my regular computer and get into my email?
Correct, yeah, it's not shutting off any of the other existing, it's strictly adding to your existing capabilities.
I think we start at 20, he can add to it thereafter.
I have a question. When you send out agenda notifications, is there a wider broadcast email than just the council on that, or is there others that are interested in receiving that? So that's just like a wide broadcast, so I would continue to get agendas and all the attachments at my Kitsap Transit. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a citizen distribution list.
Okay, so we put in for 20, try the system.
Yes, sir, it sounds like.
Is that a
Well-
trial basis too, that we?
No, that'd be actually contracting in the year, and we can bring in 20, we can add devices with a simple phone call if we need to come up with more and more licenses. As I indicated with the 25 item price break, if we hit 22, we may just say, hey, buy 25 because you're gonna get it for the same price. And certainly we can take a larger count. What I did is just counted each council member, the department heads, and also felt like, well, the department head may want a subordinate with the license. And that would be up to the department head to say, okay, you've got a couple licenses, where would you like them to go? That part there can be certainly reviewed as we get more and more into it, saying, hey, wow, this is great, let's get more. City of Bremerton is almost annually adding, more and more and more every year, just because the demand and appreciation for the product is there.
Well, it sounds like we almost don't think 20 is enough.
I was kind of shocked to hear that, but you're right. We could fall to a 20 to 25 for initial order.
But we'll Vince and I will talk with Brandy in the morning. Because you've got the contact, we'll call the company and find out how easy it is
Get something that works. Discussion item for buildable lands, Mr. Bond.
Yeah, thank you. On December 1st of this year, the Kitsap County Buildable Lands Analysis was released to the public, and I'm here to report to you on what is contained in that report. Before I get to that, you're going to hear a couple of sets of numbers. I'm going to talk about the city's population and employment allocations, and then our population and employment capacity. This report deals with the capacity, but previously I presented to you our allocation that we have to plan for as part of our 2016 comprehensive plan update. And just to remind you, the city is required to plan for an additional 8,235 residents and 3,135 jobs over the 20-year planning period. The purpose of the Buildable Lands Report is to demonstrate whether individual jurisdictions have adequate capacity to support their growth allocation, or whether they don't have adequate capacity, in which case they have to take measures to ensure that they can do their share to accommodate regional growth. And so I'm happy to report that the analysis that was provided to you shows that the city has a surplus for residential and employment capacity, meaning that the city does not have to do take any additional steps to accommodate our population or growth for the 20-year period. So I suppose that's a good thing for us, because amending development regulations takes time and effort and costs money. So from that perspective, I think I'm satisfied with what is in the report for Port Orchard, and I think that the data analysis was generally pretty accurate. I have heard some complaints from different entities about the analysis for other areas of the county, and if in fact there are problems with the other areas of the county, such as letting somebody off the hook for accommodating population or understating their capacity, that could have implications that affect Port Orchard, but it's hard for us to really evaluate that. I mostly wanted to let you know that the comment deadline is January 31st of next year, and you're free to comment on this individually if you have concerns. You also may want to comment as a body to the county, just to say that that you're satisfied with the report, or you think that something needs to change. And so I'm open to suggestion as far as how you want to proceed, but mostly I just wanted to present the information to you. And again, the good news is, based on the analysis, we don't have to respond to this in any way over the next comprehensive plan update period.
Just a question out of curiosity. I know how we get allocated the additional population. When you look to see whether we can accommodate that, do you look at already approved but not constructed building lots? Or is it completely, we have enough ground to accommodate a number of new units beyond what's already been approved?
It's a combination of the two. The analysis is done using GIS, and so you have the zoning, and we look at the achieved results as a result of the zoning. And so our R4.5 zone, it may allow for up to 4.5 units per acre, but the report shows that we're actually achieving less than what is allowed, because the market factors just don't yield that type of production. And so we look at the theoretical yield of the land and the actual the demonstrated yield of the land, in addition to then where we have existing approved projects, actually inserting those projects into the analysis. And so the McCormick Woods projects, for instance, all of the lots that are platted and have a preliminary plat approval but are not yet recorded are factored into this analysis. And so if that density is more or less than what the current zoning is, the adjustment is made in the report. And they also take away, they have standard assumptions for right-of-way and critical areas, and so those things are subtracted out of the analysis automatically. But I was pretty happy with the numbers that we received, and some of the other cities that have high allocations and don't necessarily have enough capacity, they're being forced to upzone some of their land. And so I think there are some cities that actually have to take steps to deal with what's in this report, whereas we don't.
So is there a possibility, because we have excess capacity, that we will be asked to take some of that population?
There is that possibility, though. I think because the allocations are part of the countywide planning policies, you would have to amend the countywide planning policies. And so there would have to be some sort of agreement as part of the county's update to their comprehensive plan for that type of shift to occur. But I think there will be some of that takes place, but what it looks like, I don't think we're quite there yet.
Can I get clarification? So you said that we have population 86?
We have to accommodate an additional 8,200 residents within our city boundary over the next 20-year planning period.
So is that 8,200 added to the 2012 number of 11,780?
Yes.
Or okay, so that gets us to about 20,000.
Yeah, we're gonna be
Exactly.
close.
And so that growth may not materialize, but the important thing is that based on regional projections, everybody is doing their share to make sure that we have space for the people that are coming in.
We can accommodate it if it does.
Well, I just want to make sure that everybody, from a comment standpoint, everybody realizes that it's important that the city stay under 25,000. Because as soon as we hit 25,000, SR 160 and SR 166 within our jurisdiction become our maintenance. Right now, in RCW 4724, we're regulated to that 25,000 population. So
What's the estimated annual maintenance cost on that, just so we know? Do you know, do you have an idea?
Well, when the hillside
Yeah,
sides, it's
like
a
$2 million, yeah.
I mean, we're picking up 5 signals. We'll be picking up the entire. Right now, under 4724, we just deal with vegetation and snow and ice removal and ditching of the entire mile hill. Once we hit population 25, that spur road then becomes ours, and all the way from Gorse to the top of Mile Hill, we pick up pavement, striping, signals, and then of course the section of 160 all the way out to Jackson, past Mar, that will become ours. So that signal. So we're talking a lot of money. So I hope we never go over 25,000.
Keep that in mind if we have any annexation proposals.
Yes.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
wanna
that's
be,
exactly what I was-
real mindful of
Yes.
that.
Before we get anywhere near 25, we need to figure out how to pay for it.
And the state would absolutely love, as you remember, we fought to not get 160 as a spur road. They would love for us to hit 2501, and they'll say, congratulations, here's your road.
One other thought that comes to mind, because we were talking about the mixed-use zoning density, if we do increase what's allowed in mixed use, we're actually increasing our capacity within the city and increasing the county-wide capacity. And so that does have, sort of trickles down to these reports, and we may have to, provide that sort of documentation to the county if we adopt that change. So that's all I've got.
Thank you. We're on item 4, discussion of attorney recruitment process. And I guess I can read this. Staff is seeking input on the council representatives to serve on the interview panel. Background, human resource coordinator has taken the ad hoc committee's recommendations. And further refining the selection process with the mayor, has developed a recruitment timeline and the city attorney's request for proposal. The initial screening panel will consist of two council members and the community development director, director of public works, and city treasurer. And then the final review panel will consist of the mayor, city clerk, one council member, and one staff member that participated in the initial screening panel. Staff will be working on developing a job announcement for posting on January 5th, and on the next page you'll see at least a proposed timeline for what we propose to how we propose to start going through this process. Let's see here. And Deborah Howard wasn't able to be here tonight. Beck, do you have anything you want to add?
Well, yes, because it was, I asked for it to be put on the agenda this evening, because we have a couple things to do, and that is determine what city council members would want to be on the screening panels, but also to look at what's been proposed through the Human Resources Department and how it differs from our proposal earlier. We had recommended earlier that it is recommended that the mayor, department heads, HR, and senior staff participated in the interviews to equal the number of council members who participate. And it is recommended that in the event not all council members can or wish to participate in the interview, then an equal number of mayor's staff to the council members be maintained so that it's an equal number. And so this deviated from that, and I wanted to have just a discussion on that so that everybody was comfortable with the process going forward and that we could select what council members were going to participate.
And if I may, that was for the interview. The screening portion, which is the paragraph above where it says the initial screening, consists of 2 council members, community development director, public works, and city treasurer. That also deviates from the recommendation that the ad hoc committee presented on October 21st. The initial screening recommendation that I believe we had a consensus on would be that the screening would consist of 4 people, which would include 2 council members, the mayor, and the HR staff person, which was Deb Howard. And I don't believe that we heard anything differently in our presentation from the council.
So can we get this corrected?
Well, I think that's part of why we'd like to have this discussion, is if the council wants to maintain the recommendations. My recollection of the meeting from October 21st is council was supportive of the ad hoc recommendations for both the screening and the interview, but there was some council members that had indicated they would not be interested in the interview panel, and that they felt going forward that the ad hoc committee should just work with this process to conclusion of the selection of the city attorney, was what I recalled. If that's true, then what we're looking at then would be 4 people panel for screening, and then a 6-person panel for the interviews, which would consist of Beck, myself, and Cindy, and then 3 people, either the mayor, 2 staff, or 3 staff, however the mayor chooses to do that. Was my understanding of what came out of that meeting on October 21st.
The other thing that we did with that is we kind of had a scoring system set up, and that at the end there would be all of the participants that were interviewed would be scored, and then that list would go to the mayor for selection.
I'm fine with whatever you guys came up with the first time, so here's my 2 bits.
I liked having the community development director and public works director included in the initial screening panel. I think that would bring a lot of real world experience and what we would need in an attorney. So I don't really have a problem with what's here. If you're talking strictly about numbers, then it sounds like you want to eliminate one of the 3 staff people listed here. And you know, I'm neutral on that because I figure I don't really.
So why don't you have the 3 that are recommended and the ad hoc committee for 3?
Then you can have, that would solve that.
Yeah. So
I think it's a good solution.
So we'd add another council member to the initial
Just keep
screening.
the ad hoc.
That's fine.
Is
I'm
the
fine
ad
with
hoc
that.
ad hoc for the screening and for the interview?
Yeah, plus 1 council member.
Both. Yeah, it's fine.
I like that. Put a lot into that.
All right, final review panel.
3 council members, which would consist of the ad hoc committee.
Plus Cindy.
Right, the mayor, the
I am on
city
the ad
clerk,
hoc
and then
Oh, you are?
the other staff.
Thank you.
Oh,
That would be,
So you change the 1 council to 3.
So it would be the same for initial screening and the final.
Yes.
Okay. The more the merrier.
would be, still would be 6. Yeah.
Yeah, 6 and 6.
Yeah.
The mayor, the clerk, and then 1 person to be chosen. Plus the ad hoc. Oh, great.
Okay, did everybody read the calendar on the second page. Any comments on that? It's pretty ambitious. It may, we may have to move some of the dates, but I hope not. But it's possible, just depending on what kind of folks actually submit.
You're correct, Mayor. I believe it's going to depend upon how many people apply.
It'll depend on what we have. So I just wanted to let you know that those dates are what we would love to have happen, but may not happen exactly. And there's been a couple of changes in this, the last 2 pages, where we're still working on the contract city attorney services request for proposal. We're still working on a couple of paragraphs, a couple of sentences on a couple of items. One of the things is that we're going to remove is attendance at all regular city council meetings, because we don't always require attorney attendance, and if we happen to get select a firm from Seattle, I would hate to be, a situation would arise where they were.
I don't think the ad hoc committee can support that. I think it's imperative that we have a city attorney. We certainly need one tonight. And so I would actually.
Well, we can do that, but we can do that by virtue of phone call to them also.
I don't think that works for us.
So.
I think it's
I
the
think
council's.
it's important that the city attorney be present. at
We really
council
need to
meetings.
have that.
But I don't want to say I'm firm anyway.
No.
Anything else? There was one other item that I wanted. Review original preparation of ordinances, resolution contracts, and when using the routing number system. I wanted to be sure that we told whoever's putting in for this that we do use a routing number system.
So the last thing on our recommendations is prior to posting any of the materials, the ad hoc committee would have one more opportunity to review, and so I'm making that request. Does council support that as well?
Sure.
So when the final materials are ready, Mr. Mayor, if you could have Ms. Howard forward those to me. If we don't have an email, we have things set up, maybe she can give me a phone call and tell me that they're delivered. Appreciate it, thank you.
Yep. Anything else? All right. We're on discussion item number 5.
Clausen may want to recuse himself.
Yeah, I was just going to excuse myself
But
since,
you're not going home, right?
actually I am, since this is the last item on the agenda, so.
The issue of the KT board appointment was also a discussion that we had a meeting or 2 ago. I did disclose that although I work at Kitsap Transit, I don't believe there's a conflict because I report to John and John reports to the board. So if there are no objections, I plan on staying for this conversation.
Well, I actually do object. I would like that you would also recuse yourself, and Mr. Patonsu should recuse himself. We all three of us were at the meeting this morning.
We were.
At Kitsap Transit.
And I would like to remind this body, as well as anybody else, that when we had the very same discussion in my relationship to Kitsap Transit at the full council, you had no objections then. And so I take your comments in, and I will not be recusing myself.
And I see no reason to recuse myself. Serving, I currently serve. I asked to have this item put on for the last 4 years. We've benefited from having 2 seats.
I actually do agree that you should stay, but I would have concern with you being on the discussion, being an employee of Kitsap Transit and picking a member of the board. That does influence what you do. I think that for conflict of interest, I think you should recuse yourself from this discussion.
Okay, Brett? I'll honor that.
And
So who's running the discussion?
I am on that board also, so I think I should recuse myself from, and I don't even get to vote on it. No, just wait a minute. I've got the floor. I don't get to vote on it as the chair of the meeting, but I once again think Mr. Matanzu should recuse himself. I asked him to do so, but if he does not, that I can't make him do that. Would you please take over the meeting?
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you. Go ahead.
So, this item I want to discuss is, for the last 4 years, we have had the benefit of having 2 seats at the Transit Board. Our mayor has served on that board, and I have served as the at-large member of the board. There's one at-large position that every 2 years is selected by the board chair of the transit agency. At today's transit meeting, I was replaced by Councilmember Bainbridge Island, and it was Commissioner Gilders, who's the board chair's desire to get, there's 3 smaller cities, and he wanted to, Bainbridge Island wanted, desired to have that seat 2 years ago when I was.
They want to take their turn.
They want to take their turn. 2 years ago, when I was reappointed, no one else stepped forward and wanted the seat. I've been on the board 4 years. 2 years ago, I was the board chair. The reason I got on the transit board is I'm fairly passionate about this passenger-only measure that, or research and business plan that the agencies put together, and I'd like to see that to conclusion. The transit board bylaws state that it's the mayor of Port Orchard or a member of the council member chosen by the council. So I'm just advocating that I would like to continue to serve as that role, to be our city's representative over on the transit board.
I don't have any problem with that.
Well, I'm a little concerned because there has been the tradition, and whether, I know it's in the bylaws of the transit board that the council gets to select a representative, but the other small cities, it is, Paulsville has been the mayor,
Yes.
Bainbridge the mayor, or their mayor designee, since they don't have a mayor, and Port Orchard's the mayor. So, in the sense of tradition, I am leaning towards that tradition. But are you saying that you believe that, actually, I did have a discussion with Beck, and she was saying that holistically, sometimes board positions are a better fit people's interests. I do believe you would advocate well. However, I have concerns about the passenger ferry program that you're very in favor of. That's another issue. But, so.
My position on it, which is probably separate from this, is that a federal grant was obtained. The state was, as we know, was in that business, and working through that design and development of that boat, transit agency took that over. My position is we've spent millions of dollars of taxpayer dollars to prove the technologies and develop a business plan. I feel that we owe it to the voters to ask them whether or not they want that. I would never support a position of we're going to raise taxes without a voter measure to do that, to support the passenger-only ferry position. But I think it's important that we finish what we started. Otherwise, if we don't bring a measure forward, then we need to liquidate the vote, sell the vote. If it doesn't pass, we'll be faced with the same consequences.
I have a question, because we're discussing this evening, but can we take action on it this evening?
To make an appointment.
I think so.
And that's the next, historically, our transit board meetings have been the third Tuesday of the month. One of the other changes that Commissioner Gelder made, our board chair, was to consult, the county commissioners and the mayors have a number of meetings from CENTCOM board, and so they're consolidated. The desire was to consolidate meetings, so this meeting is being moved to the first Tuesday in January. So if we're gonna make a change, I feel
do it right away.
we should, for continuity, we should do it right away, because we don't have another council meeting, and that's why I added it to tonight's.
So we could take a vote now, but we'd also have to do a resolution later, or what?
Is there a
No,
resolution?
the council can make a motion tonight, as long as the rule is that you cannot make a motion if it relates to a ordinance, you're passing an ordinance, or if you're
approving a contract, or or bill for payment of money allowed at a special meeting. So this does not apply to those three options, so you can make a motion. Just historically, you guys don't make motions at your work study sessions, but you can as long as it doesn't fit within those three categories.
And I make the motion to reappoint Bob Patansu as our representative to the Transit Board.
Second.
John, you can. You're running the meeting.
Oh,
Well, you
well,
don't
as a
live your
council
vote.
person, I still am able to do that, because, you know, I'm regular.
I think the pro temp was allowed to vote.
Okay,
yeah.
all right. I'm just trying to keep a second card. You compare?
Yes.
So, no, just put discussion.
Discussion? This is for 1 year?
I think so. I mean,
Was Steve appointed for 2 years?
he was appointed for 2 years. This is our council's seat. I would support the idea that a year from now, I'm not saying I wouldn't want to continue to serve on the board. What I'm passionate about is seeing this process through. And I'm not saying that I wouldn't be passionate about transit and transit issues in 2016, but that's
But when we do our regular committee reassignment in 2016.
That's how they did it.
it's a logical place for us to discuss that again.
You know what I'd say is that you now have as much historical knowledge as many of them on the board, probably more than a lot.
I've been on the board
4
longer
years.
than most of the other council.
And
most members.
what I've seen in our particular city is we've lost a lot of historical knowledge when we lost the city attorney, and when we start losing that historical knowledge, now we're starting from scratch in some ways. And so, you know, I would feel better with you on there, that's all.
Since it's appointing me, I plan to abstain from voting. I just want to bring the.
We're down to,
I know.
we're
But
down
do
to
we
the
need,
numbers
do we
here.
need any type of a quorum? I mean, we have a quorum. Do we? how many votes?
It doesn't need 4 votes to pass.
Which is majority.
It's a
Okay,
simple
so
majority.
I think it's, while I felt it was important to bring the information forward and my desire to serve, I'm not going to vote for myself.
Okay.
I guess the only other thing is I understand the time frame, but I still wish that we had had it on the agenda with a little more thought. I would have preferred that we actually had a meeting next Tuesday, but I know that we're not.
And I wasn't positive that this action that took place today was going to happen. It was a possibility. My point was, and today was the last
day.
We meet once a month, and it was on the agenda today at Transit, and
Yes.
I've been replaced.
And I was on the committee that reviewed that section of the bylaws a couple weeks ago. And at that time, I voted to keep the wording as it is. And it definitely says the 3 county commissioners are on the board. The mayor of Bremerton is called out as an individual. And then it's a member of the Bremerton Council. And then it is the mayor or city council person appointed by the city councils for the 3 cities, Bainbridge Island, Port Orchard,
The actual
and
verbiage is
Oslo.
chosen by the city.
Chosen by, yeah. And one of my comments that evening, and what I shared with Fred the other day, is that I supported that because we ask the mayors to be on, or the mayors are required to be on a lot of various committees. And it seems to me that an individual that maybe has a particular passion for homelessness would want to be on the Housing Solutions Committee. And someone maybe who's interested in mental health would want to be on the Kitsap Mental Health Board. But we ask the mayors to be on all of these things, and we really overextend them. So my feeling was any jurisdiction that had someone with a particular interest in that subject, that they have the opportunity to place that person on that board. That was my rationale behind the vote I made the other evening.
Could we ask the mayor if he wants to be on this board?
see.
bylaws say that it's chosen by the council, not by the mayor.
They say about city attorney too.
So,
All right, well, so we take a vote?
yeah, we're ready.
Okay, all in favor of Rob serving on that board? Aye?
All right.
Aye. I'll support that. Opposition? Okay,
One abstention.
one abstention. Brandy, you have that? Yes. Thank
3 to
you.
1, 3, 1, and 1.
Okay,
Is that the last item?
I believe that is the last item, so the meeting is adjourned.
I have a question.
Yes.
I'd like to know, there's a lady in the audience with a purple hat, Christmas hat on. I've never seen a purple
A
Christmas
purple
hat.
Christmas hat?